Shalom. We now come to the third of our thinkers, Rabbi Moshe ben Maimon, 1135 to 1204, the Rambam. His major book of Jewish thought is Moreh Nevuchim, the Guide for the Perplexed. Now, while Sadia and Yehuda Halevi wrote books that were accessible, intended to be read by everybody, Rambam says explicitly in his introduction that Moreh Nevuchim is intentionally difficult. It is meant for the student who is thoroughly versed in all aspects of Torah, but as he begins to study science and philosophy, he encounters difficulties in reconciling these two realms. Rambam does not want anyone to merely dabble in his book. Moreh Nevuchim is aimed at only those who are prepared to do the hard work needed to understand it. Rambam, like Sadia, is a rationalist, but unlike Sadia, he doesn't use the argument from the universe's existence to prove the existence of God. This is because there is a possibility that the universe has always existed. Creation, that is, creation of existence from nothingness, could not, by definition, be witnessed. So instead, following Aristotle's reasoning, Rambam proves the existence of God based on the undeniable occurrence of change and motion. He argues, even if the universe is eternal, there is no question but that change does happen. We observe it. And every change requires an earlier cause or motion, and so on. This chain of causes cannot be extended back infinitely. There must have been a first motor, an external force that initiated the process of change. The most that you can definitely say about God using reason, therefore, is that he is the prime mover, or first motor. But, unlike Aristotle, Rambam does accept the principle that even more than being the prime mover, God is also the creator of the universe. On what basis does the Rambam accept this? Because he has a reliable tradition that teaches him so. A tradition that reason cannot prove, but neither does it refute it. Another principle of faith that Rambam investigates is that God is incorporeal, meaning that he is in no way limited, neither physically, by a body, by space, nor by time. This must be true by definition, because God is, by definition, without limits. Anything physical, on the other hand, is limited. Even if, for example, you propose that God has a very, very big arm, as a physical entity, it must be limited. And God cannot both be God and be physically or temporally limited. Now, Rambam identifies a problem, which is one of the central themes of Moreh Nevuchim. The Tanakh frequently speaks of God in bodily, even human terms. It mentions his arm, his head, his eyes. It also describes his attributes and behaviors, such as anger, pleasure, and speech. Logically, God must be incorporeal, yet the Tanakh, call it the tradition, speaks of God in physical terms. Rambam's solution to this problem is both simple and elegant. He says, all the references to God in the Tanakh that seem physical are merely metaphors, literary devices, used to convey complex concepts. They were never meant to be taken literally. This approach is by now so familiar to us, we might wonder why Rambam even considered it a problem. Yet think of how what can only be called the Rambam's faith in reason underlies his solution. When reason and tradition threaten to contradict each other, he demands that we re-examine and reinterpret tradition in favor of unassailable reason. Along these lines, Rambam asks, is the Torah true? Is it logical? Thus, he subjects the laws of the Torah to reason. Rambam identifies two approaches to the mitzvot. One, that they are the product of God's will, and the other, that they are the product of God's wisdom. In other words, do God's commandments have no reasons, but he commands purely to assert his will and dominion? Or does God command in accordance with his wisdom because the commandments have reasons, even if these reasons are beyond human comprehension? Rambam devotes the last section of Moreh Nevuchim to suggesting possible explanations, emphasis on possible, for all the mitzvot. He argues that even hard-to-understand commandments like the prohibitions against shatnez, garment mixed of wool and linen, and mixing milk and meat, can be rationalized as ancient idolatrous practices, which the Torah seeks to prohibit thoroughly. To summarize the general goals of the Torah, Rambam says, the law as a whole aims at two things: the welfare of the soul and the welfare of the body. As for the welfare of the soul, it consists in the multitudes acquiring correct opinions. The second thing consists in the acquisition by every human individual of moral qualities that are useful for life in society so that the affairs of the city may be ordered. In conclusion, Torah doesn't aspire to blind, unquestioning faith. Saadia Gaon, Rabbi Yehuda Halevi, and the Rambam have much to say for our modern era. They approach the principles of Torah faith from different perspectives, placing different emphasis on the primacy of reason over tradition or tradition over reason, but all agree that since God gave us the capacity for reason, we must use it as best we can to comprehend Him, His Torah, and His relationship to us. Shalom.